Well, I'm here in the Roots Music Canada living room talking with the two fantastic vocal acts. So on my left I have Cadence, Ross, Kurt, Aaron, Carl, there you go, and on my right I have Brenna MacCrimmon. Both acts Juno-nominated, both of you, and vocalists really with a whole lot in common that we're going to talk about. And there's one other artist that's not in the room that's going to come up a lot in this conversation, and that's Bobby McFerrin, because you all have met him and worked with him and have been inspired by him, as all of us have. You're a world-renowned Turkish folk singer.
Yeah, go figure.
Yeah. I want you to take me back to that time in the Burlington Library when you were a teenager, when you first heard the music which would become your life. What happened?
Well, I was just a musically curious person. I liked listening to music from all over the place, and I had sort of gone through my early teenage years listening to various sorts of punk and noise, and just started wondering what else was out there, and it very much began as just, well, what are the sounds from the other parts of the world? And when I got to music from Turkey and Eastern Europe, you know, I think people would like to say this great light, you know, pooh, from heaven or something. It wasn't quite like that, but I just went, wow, that's really interesting, and the rhythms were interesting, and the scales, and you know, the sounds, and there was definitely like a real emotional component, and a lot of vocal music. I mean, a lot of and music that has dissonance in it, and things that we don't normally call acceptable, and you know, or you know.
I'm going to go over to my other side and balance these two acts nicely here. Okay, you are obviously a group of 4 male singers. You sing a cappella, and one of the things that struck me when I was reading about you, you said you're showing audiences that there are no limits to the human voice. What do you mean by that? So you want to clarify that for me?
I think there are sort of 2 components to that answer. Something that is very idiomatic of our group is we tend toward the jazz music for the most part, but we do a lot of instrumental imitation, and so we remove the need for being sort of a front person and band, because we provide the band ourselves, and over the course of a live Cadence show you'll hear bass and drums and trumpets and trombones and the whole gamut of instruments. And so there's that element to it, and then the other side is the fact that vocal music is sort of a self-contained thing, and it is something that sort of goes beyond language and culture, and that everyone can sort of connect with in some particular way.
Yeah, I find that interesting that you're talking about how it can transcend language and really go beyond the culture that it even started out with, and that certainly relates to what you were talking about, Brenna, but how that reached out to you, you know, here in Burlington as you were a teenager, how that reached out to you and went beyond those limits. And so now this brings us to Bobby McFerrin, who, now you did a workshop with him in Russia, in Moscow?
It was actually a theater piece, if you want to call it. They were calling it an improvised opera. And it involved 16 singers and Bobby, and it's called Babel, and it's based on the story of the Tower of Babel. And it starts out where everybody sings the same language. Everybody sings the same, you know, it's a common language, and then through ego and lack of artistry and commercialism, everybody sort of splits and shatters, and in the end everybody is brought together again through the magic that Bobby can create with a group of people and an audience. So that was what I was there in Moscow to do with him.
So I love the way you talked about how he brought together all of the vocalists and also extended it to the audience, really made that a unified whole. And I'm wondering if that resonates with you as well. you know, you also are trying to bring together your voices into a unified whole and then bring the audience into that. And you've had the pleasure of working with Bobby McFerrin, who's really the master. And recently you opened for him at Roy Thompson Hall. So tell us about that, being in his presence. Was your experience similar to Brenna?
Yeah, I think anybody who works with Bobby McFerrin, there's a certain, you kind of feel humbled in his presence. And, you know, for the number of times that we've had the chance to meet him now and work with him, I mean, it was such an honor for us, for him to open the stage and, first of all, allow us to do one of our own songs in front of 2,500 people. Yeah, there's something about performing with him that it definitely felt like that. It felt like, you know, this was more experience than any performance we've ever done, and worth more than the money we've ever made on an individual gig. And that's, I think, what you were talking about.
That's exactly.
We would have paid to be there if the
I
opportunity had presented itself. Luckily, we didn't have to.
Right.
Yeah, it was just amazing.
Part of his magic is that he's studied a long time, he's developed his art, and he's completely free with it, and he trusts it. He trusts himself, and that trust radiates, and I think that's what takes him to the incredible high places that he goes, and he's able to take other people because he trusts himself.
I think that gives us permission as well, because I think I was going to say the same thing. It sort of sees, he'll look at it and he's like, he locks, and it's like, I see the light in you, kind of thing, and I'm giving you permission to jump out and let's have this thing. And you're like, oh, this is great. So he's very much a light that we see, and exactly that, he gives you that permission to just do that thing that you think, oh, I can't, I'm gonna do it, here I go, you know, and he just gets everyone to do that.
More on a technical side, because I sing bass for Cadence, and so a lot of times I'm just in the lower register, and a lot of times just a simple thing as Bobby, like being able to switch between falsetto and bass notes so accurately and so quickly is an inspiration for me. Like, it's something that I would love to improve upon, and to get to his level would be unbelievable. But just something simple like that, an inspiration to continue to work on vocal technique. I mean, we're professional singers, and this is our full-time job, and we strive to be the best we can at what we do. But when you find an inspiration like that to further yourself as just a vocalist and as a musician in general, I think that for me that was huge.
Thank you so much for coming in. It's just been a real pleasure to talk to you, Cadence and Brenna MacCrimmon.